Hey everybody, Brandon here. Welcome back to another episode of the Road to Chess Mastery. Today we are going to be covering game number 4 in my 13th tournament. And currently I am on, I believe, an 10 or 11 game streak. You'll see it on the screen. And we are now playing against Chene. And I am playing with the black pieces. And let's see how the game progresses. E4 and C6. Caro-Kann. I'm not playing Sicilians anymore. Why worry about the Sicilians and complexities and all that when you could just play boring moves, let your opponent fall asleep, and then win on time. D4, D5, knight C3, and D takes E4, knight takes E4. So this is the main line. We're after bishop to F5, knight G3, and bishop G6. Play is pretty straightforward. Knight F3. Knight D7, preventing knight to E5. This can be a very annoying move, this position. And bishop D3. So bishop D3 wasn't really best immediately. I mean, it's a good move. I'm not saying it's a bad move, but H4 is usually what is considered to be more aggressive nowadays. We're after H5, then bishop D3, and this pawn on H5. It looks a little silly, but there's a lot of play because of it, and if black ever castles kingside now, well, this is actually a huge advantage to have this pawn on H5. But okay, bishop D3 immediately, still a good move. I'm just saying that H4 is a critical main line nowadays. Bishop takes D3, queen takes D3, and knight to F6. Castles in E6, so this is a position where it doesn't really feel like white did too much to show their advantage, and it feels like black kind of has an okay position now. Rook E1, bishop to E7, bishop G5. So I felt comfortable here. Again, as I mentioned, there's not really too much anymore in the position. We see castles from me, rook A to D1 and H6. Okay, bishop to C1. C5, and now I'm just trying to break down their center, and this is exactly what this move does. My opponent played queen to B5, which was interesting. If takes, just knight takes, and if we trade, there's imbalances. I have a kingside majority, they have a queenside majority, so the idea is I need to create a pass pawn on the kingside, and they needed to create a pass pawn on the queenside. Of course, there are some complexities to it, but this was a big idea in this position because there aren't any weaknesses for either side. But if this position occurred, I would feel like I reasonably equalized here. But queen b5, trying to attack b7. I unfortunately don't really think this works out too well because I just take on d4. And after rook takes d4, queen to b6, just trying to trade. Unfortunately, if I were to take like this, okay, that would be great. Unfortunately, queen takes b5 is in the position. But okay, they took on b6 and I took back with the knight. And again, as I mentioned, I'm pretty happy here. And my opponent made not such a great move. It's the move bishop to e3. It looks natural, but the point is knight to d5 threatens to take the piece. And it also has another devious threat behind it, where not just taking the piece, but you have to recapture with the pawn. Unfortunately, I'm assuming my opponent wanted to just take on e3 and was happy to trade here. But after c4, this ruins their pawn structure. After knight takes e3, f takes e3. So if rook takes, then bishop to c5. And I'm winning the exchange. So f takes e3 is forced. And here, it's easy to say that black has a slight edge here because of their pawn structure, simply because it's ruined on the king side. Proving this obviously is a different thing, but normally when you evaluate a position, you can say you look at the piece placement. Okay, sure, white looks a little bit more active with their pieces, but realistically not really. I just play rook d8, and this activity doesn't really mean too much at all. And then we look at pawn structure, we also look at king placement, etc. But the big difference, the big imbalance here is the bishop versus knight and the pawn structure, both which end up favoring me here. I played bishop c5, and then rook to d3, and rook 8 to d8. Now, unfortunately, they cannot play a move like rook e to d1. First off, this bishop takes e3 immediately, because if I took, then it's defended, but there's also moves like knight g4, so either way, it should benefit me. But my opponent saw this, and they played rook b3. Rook b3 attacks b7 and goes for counterplay, but after b6, there's no more counterplay, unfortunately, with attacking the pawn. And of course, rook a3 isn't possible, but even if it was, I would just go a5, and this would be okay. Now we can see here, when we look at the pawn imbalances, these pawns aren't going anywhere. This is where they have their advantage, and they can't really go for an easy queenside expansion, and because of this, they can't create a passed pawn, and because of that, that means we should definitely have a more significant edge. Knight to e5. I played rook to c8. I just didn't want to see any knight to e6s on the board, which can be annoying, because if knight c6 here, like let's just say g5, knight c6, I'd have to play rook a8 to defend the pawn, and there's always knight e7 possibilities. It's obviously not working yet because the bishop's there, but just why allow that when you can just go rook to c8? And again, it's not really so easy to go on this file, because rook d8, I can just counteract that. But king f2, rook f to d8, so I'm just gaining space, trying to improve my position the best I can, and then we see move rook to e2. What I really wanted to do here was just give a check on g4. Unfortunately, that's not quite working. So I played bishop to d6 first, forcing knight to f3. It's not really a trap, but for example, if knight to d3 here, there is always bishop takes, followed by rook takes c4, so that's always in the position. Knight to f3, there is still taking here, or even just taking on c4 immediately, but I just stuck on c4, obviously. I didn't see any reason to get rid of this piece, because after takes, maybe there's king takes, it gives them something. It gives them improved pieces. This knight on g3 is not doing anything. Why improve it? Anyways, knight f1 was played to remaneuver, and I decided to force their king further back and further restrict them with the move knight to e4. Now we can see that their king is forced to go either to e1 or g1. I'm pretty sure they were scared of e1, maybe because of a bishop e4. I mean, this realistically doesn't do too much. They can just block, but it's definitely scary nonetheless. Now, actually looking back on this, king to e1, I should have seen this. Rook to c1 is a bit of an issue. My apologies. But king to g1, yeah, I guess only move then. Then we see bishop to e7. Knight 3 to d2, but unfortunately this natural move loses material. It's very difficult to come up with a move now. I would say maybe g3, king g2, or even g4. You need to gain space in some way, and then follow up with move like knight to g3 here, or even king g2 first, knight g3. But I'm up a pawn, and things are looking very grim. But again, knight 3 to d2 doesn't help because of rook c2, and now this piece is pinned, and the piece is actually just lost because what can you do? If you take on e4, which is what occurred in the game, I'm up an exchange now with taking on e2. I'm up 3 points of material. This should be a win. h3, rook to c2, king h2, and rook to d1. So now I'm just again trying to probe into the position as much as possible. f5 to kick away the knight, so I can go rook d2, rook d to d2. And here, I think maybe bishop f6 may be best if I'm trying to play for accuracy, but when you're up this much material, you don't really have to play for accuracy, you can just play to simplify, and this is exactly what I did. I just sacrificed the exchange back, but it's not sacrificing the exchange because I actually win a piece out of it. It's 2 knights for the rook. And it's not about the material you give back, it's about the resulting position. Don't be afraid to sacrifice material, sacrifice pawns in any way if it gives you a easily winning position, because the less pieces they have to, well, bother you with and give counterplay. So here we see king to g3, and I play bishop c5 and king f3. And with that state of mind that I just explained, what do you think the move here is that I played? Now, there's a lot of good moves. Rook c2, rook d2, rook e1. All good moves, right? It's hard to find a bad move, unless you just let them take your rook. But I just took on e3, because after rook takes e3, bishop takes, king takes, it looks like such a silly move. Like, why did you just lose a piece there? But, okay, I took off a pawn, I'm 2 pawns up, and a king and pawn ending. There's no counterplay here. It's very straightforward to win. King to f7, king f6, or sorry, g4, king f6. Takes, and my opponent resigns because I'm up 2 pawns, and there's no tricks in the position. I just play g5, h5, g4, maybe even f4. I bring my king in. There's nothing anymore, and this should be a straightforward win. So after this game, I am now 12 or 13 games without a loss. You'll see on the screen, but I am feeling quite confident in my play now, and I increased my streak by another game, and this was again game 4, and now I am 4 out of 4 in this tournament. I am on track to have another perfect score, one tournament after another, and I'm really hoping to keep this up. But will we, is the question. Anyways, if we take one thing away from this game, I would say make sure to just avoid things like this bishop e3. I think this bishop e3 is what caused issues. But after knight d5, realize the threats of bishop c5. So just avoid skewers, avoid any alignment issues. And bishop e3 caused alignment issues. So that is the lesson I take away from this, is alignment is key in these types of positions. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in game number 5 of this tournament.